Hey everyone, it's Kenji. I am here at my new home. Still a bit of a mess because we still don't have all of our shelves, but I'm making some mushroom soup, so I thought I would show you how I'm doing that. So this is a super simple mushroom soup. Mushroom soup could get a little more complicated than this, but we're going with just basic cremini mushrooms here. You could use white button mushrooms, or you can use a mix of mushrooms. Like at a fancy restaurant, you might make like a chanterelle soup or a morel soup, and the basic process is exactly the same. You're going to be cleaning your mushrooms, cooking them with some broth, some dairy, and then pureeing it. So it's a really easy process. Mushrooms like this, when you buy them from the store, typically they don't really need much washing because they're cultivated and they're actually pretty clean. If you see a little bit of dirt on them, you can rub the dirt off with your fingers. You could wipe it off with a damp paper towel. Wild mushrooms, the kind of mushrooms you might get at a fancy restaurant or a fancy sort of gourmet shop, you might have to give them a little bit more of a clean. So typically you would do that with a damp paper towel or with a special mushroom brush. I doubt most of you have mushroom. I mean, I don't even have a mushroom brush at home, but with the supermarket mushrooms, you don't really need to. So little bits of dirt like that you can pick off with your fingers. If your mushrooms come looking real dirty, you can feel free to wash them. There's this myth that you can't wash mushrooms because they'll absorb water, which is not really true. A little bit of water will cling to their surfaces, but it'll evaporate off pretty quickly anyway. So you can totally wash your mushrooms, spin them dry in a salad spinner, and go that way. I'm slicing my mushrooms. An easier way to do this, or if you've got a little kid who wants to do mushrooms, one nice way to do mushrooms, especially for a soup like this where we're going to puree it and we want it kind of chunky, just take the mushroom like this and squash it. It'll, a kid can do it. You can do it. Just break it up. It'll cook basically the same. In fact, I don't even know why I was chopping those. Squash them with your hands, break them up. That's all you need to do. That'll work for any kind of sort of really, mushroom application where it's going to be sort of either pureed or finely minced. So you can make like a duxelle like this if you really break it up with your finger. I'm sure you've all seen beef Wellington photos or videos where you coat the beef with a mushroom mixture. You can make your duxelle like that if you're not trying to impress anyone. All right, mushrooms, I'm going to just saute them with some butter. This is about 12 ounces of mushrooms. I'll link to like an exact recipe I have for this, and I think I have another video even where I'm making a more sort of precise version of this. But, as you know, I very rarely follow recipes, even my own recipes when I'm cooking. I see them more sort of a guideline once you sort of understand how they work. All right, going to melt some butter. You could use olive oil if you want. And so what we're making today is sort of technically, I think you would call it a veloute, which is a, one of the French mother sauces. So a veloute is basically a stock that's thickened with a roux. And so this is a mushroom veloute. So what we're going to do is we're going to saute these mushrooms down in butter. This is relatively high heat right now. You're going to see mushrooms expel a lot of moisture early on. And you kind of got to evaporate all that moisture before you can get any kind of significant browning on them. So I'm going on high heat right now. Once the mushrooms start really cooking, I might turn it down a little bit if I'm not able to sort of super pay attention to them and stay here stirring constantly because I don't want them to burn. But I'll probably be able to get away with going high heat the whole time. All right, so this is about 12 ounces of mushrooms. A little salt. Some pepper. We're gonna let that start cooking down a bit. Actually, I will turn it down just a bit because it seems to be sizzling a little harder than I wanted to. All right, now over here, I have to work on a couple of my other ingredients. Now, alliums, I got a leek here, which is just kind of languishing in my fridge, which is why I'm using it. You can do an onion. You don't have to do leeks. You could do a shallot. If you're going to be making stock soon, you could save these leek greens and stick them in your stock, but I'm not, so I'm composting it. So leeks often they grow in really sandy soil, and often they'll have a bit of sand. This one looks pretty clean actually, but they'll have some sand caught up in their fronds. So what you do is you split them in half, run them under the sink like this. Clean them out. I'm going to split them into quarters and then just into chunks like this. People have asked me what this knife is. Right now, all of my knives are in a box, and in fact, actually, just today, I got my new magnetic knife racks. So I'm going to be using a whole series of these guys that I'm going to stick up here and perhaps along another wall somewhere to hang all my knives. But right now, the only knife I have in my kitchen is this, usable knife I have in my kitchen is this Chinese-style chef's knife. It looks similar to a Western cleaver. You could probably even call it a Chinese cleaver. But it's really used for vegetable. I mean, it's sort of the all-purpose Chinese chef's knife. Not as heavy as a Western style cleaver, and it gets nice and sharp. This one is from a company called Shibazi. You can get that for around $45 online. Very good deal. These kinds of knives, they take a little bit of getting used to if you're not used to using a bigger knife like this, but I enjoy them. I think it's a good knife. Definitely a good knife for the money. And one of the nice things about Chinese cleavers is that they allow you to do things like mince garlic really fast. Ready? Watch this. And we have minced garlic. Ta-da! Don't need to be too precise with the mincing anyway, because we're going to be, again, sort of sauteing and blending this all down. Alright, so those are my alliums there. I'm going to get some thyme as well. I'm not going to be not super precise about picking out every little fine stem, because, well, it'll get blended. One of the restaurants I used to work at, it used to be the server's job to the server's job to pick all the individual thyme leaves off of the thyme stems, because none of the cooks like to do it, which in retrospect is kind of just lazy, huh? Making someone else do your job. Anyhow, I didn't really think about it much then because I wasn't in charge. All right, we got some thyme. And if you're being real lazy about it, you don't even have to pick these off. What you can do actually is just take the whole sprig, and when we're simmering the soup down, you can take the entire sprig and just chuck it in the soup, and then before you blend it, pull it out so that you get all the flavor, and some of the leaves will fall off too, but you get all the flavor out of it, and then you pull it out before you blend it, so that you get the stem out of there. All right, this is going to take probably, mushrooms take a good while to brown properly, so this is going to take probably about, I'd say 5 more minutes at this heat. Depending on your range top, it could take anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes, but I'm going to sit here and stir for a little bit. We're making a very small portion of this mushroom. This is basically just for me and my wife and my toddler, and none of us are huge eaters, so this is a small portion. The actual recipe I have published will serve 4 to 6 people, and I think that calls for 2 pounds of mushrooms, so more than twice this much. Anyhow, all right, I will sit here and babysit the mushrooms, and I'll be back in just about 5 minutes. So you can see these mushrooms are starting to brown. There's no more liquid at the bottom. All the liquid's evaporating, so they're really starting to sizzle. You can also see they're starting to stick to the bottom a little bit. If that happens when you're sauteing, in fact, when you're sauteing virtually anything, if it starts to look a little bit dry like that, you can add a little splash of oil or butter. I could add butter. I'm going to go with some olive oil because it's easier and I have it right there. Just so that it moistens up and you're really making sure that everything is cooking evenly. There's a few exceptions for that. So for instance, if you're sauteing eggplant, it'll really absorb the oil at the beginning and then start to expel the oil again. So if you add more oil when eggplant looks dry, it'll make everything super greasy. But for the most part, whether you're sauteing onions or greens or anything like that, if it looks dry, just feel free to add a little bit more oil. All right, so these mushrooms are nice and brown now. I'm gonna add in my allium, so my leeks, garlic, my thyme. You don't have to use thyme, by the way. Thyme, I think, it kind of naturally pairs with mushrooms because they both are kind of woodsy. They seem to pair nicely to me. But you could use something like sage, you could use marjoram, you could use savory, you could use parsley, rosemary, whatever you feel like, honestly. Mushrooms won't care. They're easygoing. They're easygoing fun guys. All right. I'm gonna lower the heat a little bit so that nothing burns. We really want those leeks and garlic to just kind of soften and not brown too much, because we don't want that sort of added sweetness of caramelized onion sugars or leek sugars. I got some parsley out, which I'm just going to use to garnish the soup when it's done. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of flour. So this is a veloute, which means that it's thickened with flour. So for this amount of mushroom, I'm going to add about a tablespoon, maybe a little more than about a tablespoon of flour. I'm also going to add just a touch more butter because it is looking a little dry still. We want to make sure that butter cooks evenly. So after this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some stock to it. If you happen to have in your pantry, or you're out of the supermarket and you feel like it, if you happen to have some dried mushrooms, reconstituting dried mushrooms in stock, what I would do is I would take some of those dried mushrooms, maybe a quarter ounce of them or half ounce of them, put them in a microwave safe container, cover them with a couple cups of stock, and then microwave it until the stock is really hot, and then sort of let it sit there and steep like tea. Then you can drain out those reconstituted dried mushrooms, saute them along with your fresh mushrooms, and save that stock as the base for your soup. And you'll sort of really reinforce that mushroom flavor. Dried mushrooms tend to be super concentrated in flavor. I would recommend something like porcini, or maybe if you want shiitake, they have a sort of distinct flavor to them. Shiitake, maitake would be great too, but porcini would sort of be my dried mushroom of choice. Dried morels are also great. All right, that's looking good. Now I'm going to take some sherry, optional. You could also use sort of Chinese Shaoxing wine, or you could use regular old white wine. I'm adding about an end of a bottle to it, half a cup maybe. And with that, we're going to scrape. This is called deglazing, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to get those browned bits off the bottom and sides of the pan, because those are packed with flavor, those brown bits, and we want that all to make it into our soup. All right. Now, some chicken broth. You can use store-bought or homemade. I always get low sodium just because I like to have control over the seasoning in my dish. So low sodium chicken broth is always a good bet as opposed to the regular stuff. So for this amount of mushrooms, I'm probably going to add maybe 2 cups or so. And then I'm going to add about a half cup of milk, or maybe 1 cup of milk. Just a little dairy, not a ton. If you want to keep this totally vegan, by the way, you can. At my restaurant at López-Alt, we used to make all of our soups were vegan. So we would make vegetable stocks, and we made a mushroom soup using just vegetable stock. You don't need to add any dairy at all. Just use olive oil to saute the mushrooms, vegetable stock. All right, so now I'm going to let this simmer. Do I have any bay leaves? Yeah, I do have some bay leaves. I'll get a couple bay leaves in there. I can't remember where are my bay leaves. Here they are. Everything's new here for me. Add a bay leaf in there. Get some lemon juice for the end. All right, so I'm gonna let this come up to a boil, reduce it to a bare simmer, and then let it cook for just a couple minutes, just so that bay leaf can infuse some of its flavor, and so everything can sort of get to know each other in there. All right, so I will be back in just about 4 more minutes. All right, so everything's simmered down. You could let this go longer if you want. You will get a little more flavor out of it, but lunchtime is almost ready here, so I'm just gonna speed it up. All right, pop that bay leaf out. Bring out our trusty friend, the hand blender. You don't have to use a hand blender, of course. You can use a regular blender or even a food processor. Or you could keep it as chunky like this if you don't mind. It's going to be perfectly delicious just like this. But I'm going to take a second to just lightly puree it. Heat off so I don't melt my cord. I've melted many cords on these hand blenders, especially at restaurants like where your burners are just kind of always on. All right. How chunky do we want this? Maybe a tiny bit more. You can also, make this sort of silky smooth, and that's delicious too. All up to you. Okay, that looks good to me for now. Toss this guy in the sink, and now let's give it a taste and see what we need. Let's taste with these guys. Yum. All right. A little bit of salt, a little bit more pepper. I'm gonna little splash of lemon juice. Not much. Lemon juice, you'll find that after salt, acid is the most sort of important seasoning. Not all foods require acid in the way that sort of all foods require salt, but oftentimes if you find that your soup or your food is not sort of bright and popping in your mouth the way you want it to, it's because it needs a little bit of acid. All right. Let's use our French onion soup pots. I don't know why. All right, parsley. Nice rustic chop on it. And there we go. This is like I don't know how long that took total, maybe 15-20 minutes. Super simple and delicious mushroom veloute. I'm going to finish it with some parsley, get the good olive oil, drizzle of it. You know what I'll do just for kicks, because I have it around? I'm gonna pull out the end of a truffle I had from New Year's. Truffle and mushrooms, of course, go well. They're all fungi. This is black truffle. By no means a necessary ingredient for delicious mushroom soup, but You got it. Why not, right? All right. Truffles, they actually grow in the Pacific Northwest. Not these Perigord truffles and the French truffles and the Italian white truffles are sort of the really prized ones, but there are truffles in the Pacific Northwest, which is where I live now. So I'm probably going to be going out truffle hunting, and maybe I'll try and share some of that with you. Here we go. All right. Delicious mushroom veloute. Oh God, that truffle. As soon as it hits that hot soup and it kind of, the aroma starts wafting up. I love truffle. I know some people don't like it, but I love it. Ooh, hot. Right. This, a little bit of sourdough, perfect meal. All right, guys, gals, non-binary pals, thank you for joining me. Stay safe, wear a mask. I hope everyone is going to have a good new year, better 2021 than 2020. Love you all. See you later. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, it's Kenji. There are 22 million kids in this country that rely on school lunches for nutritious meals. And with schools closed now more than ever, organizations like No Kid Hungry can use their support. So I'm asking you to join me. Click the link in the description below to donate some money. No amount is too small or too big. Thank you very much and stay safe. Bye-bye.